welcome to the show.
Hi.
If you're a Formula One fan, you will probably have seen her posts up on both TikTok and Instagram. I have no idea how you post so much in a day. I wish I couldn't. I can't get that much out. So all kudos to you. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, it feels weird to be sat down on a Saturday, but it's nice. I've got loads of filming to do after this as well. So for TikTok, actually. So, yeah.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye out for that. Hi, Zach. How you doing, mate? It's been a while since we've done this.
I'm all right. How are you doing, Drew?
Busy. There's been a lot going on, to be fair, mate. Right, so we're all here to discuss Formula One, and obviously, like I said, it's been a while since we've done this, so we've got quite a bit to talk about. Can we start with RB's story? There's been loads of things happening in little bits for a while, and there's quite a lot of focus, obviously, on Max recently. But I was thinking the other day, RB's troubles go back a lot further than just the last set of regs coming into play. Since 2022, when Dietrich Mateschitz passed away, they've just been going downhill ever since. We've had inter-team fractions, we've had the inter-team politics, obviously the Christian Horner story. And I'm just wondering, with the loss of multiple key personnel, is this the end of the road for RB? What do you reckon?
I think for Red Bull themselves, they've obviously still got the junior team, but they've been going downhill quite a lot, as you say, because they've been beaten by the junior team. And with the key people, mainly it started to go down when Horner left, obviously. That was the massive scandal. And obviously Marco left, which I don't think too many people bother about personally. I think he was quite a divisive person and he didn't always get it right. But a main issue now is obviously Max's race engineers left GB. And apparently, even Hannah Schmitz might be getting poached. Apparently, that is a bit of a rumour. I was reading one of the auto race in Italy the other day. There's no pressure for her to leave because all these key people have gone. I wonder if Verstappen is going to leave and what will actually happen to the Red Bull team. Do you reckon they might actually pull out of F1 and just leave with the junior team?
Well, we've got to remember, Red Bull's a drinks company, first and foremost. Their whole existence in Formula One has been a marketing strategy, a very bloody successful one, but it is just a marketing strategy. And obviously, when you're winning, you stick around. I can't help thinking that Red Bull and Formula One, it's done its job for Red Bull.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, so obviously they have this extreme sports mentality that they have for the whole marketing campaign that they've got going on. I think that they have so many ties to so many extreme sports now. They have like the cliff diving and like surfing and all of these like extreme wild events that are going on behind the scenes that I just don't think that they do really need Formula One to be known as the extreme sport drinks company that they are anymore. We have to remember that they bought into F1 on a £1 deal with Jaguar, didn't they? To fund their marketing campaign or like to kick that off. And I just think that that's a really good return on investment for them in terms of what they have got back from that for the marketing. And yes, they've like got 4 championships behind them now. So if ever there was a time for them to start pulling away from motorsport, I think it would be now.
There is another thing that ties into the Red Bull story. Red Bull, up until very recently, have owned the promoter rights for the World Rally Championship. Now, they've also pulled out or are in the process of pulling out of that. So it seems that it's a refocusing of their attentions in terms of extreme sports. Because so many key personnel have moved, yes, they're going to have their own personal reasons for doing that, but being key personnel, I can't help thinking, are they already aware of a wind down by Red Bull? Maybe in the next 3-4 years. Because obviously they've built a car now for this set of regulations. They're probably going to see that through till, 29, 30 or something. After that, are they just going to wind it all down and sell the team?
Yeah, I think that's the way that we're heading. But it makes me wonder what will happen to racing bulls in that instance as well. I think this season has definitely opened their eyes to the fact that they potentially can just start moving away from it.
Absolutely. And then we've got Max and his future. There's been quite a lot of press about his dislike of the regs, and I'm on his side, to be honest. I don't particularly enjoy them either. I didn't like them on the first race. I got about, what did I say, Zach? Was it about lap 6? I went, this isn't right. And then the second race I actually enjoyed. And then Suzuka, I'm back again. I'm back to just not liking them. I'm kind of with Max on that. But in terms of him and his future, he wants to race. And now he's also a team boss in his own right in the GTs. He loves it. Obviously, that ties in quite heavily with his sim racing as well. So he doesn't need, and I believe him when he says he doesn't care. So he doesn't need F1 anymore. He's sticking around out of possibly a sense of duty, of responsibility, perhaps. I don't know. What do you guys reckon?
Well, I don't think he's going to just leave midway through a season. I think that his dad sort of brought him up to be a race car driver. And if you're a race car driver, you're also a businessman, so you have to fulfill your contracts to some degree. But I think you are right. I think he is absolutely sick of it. And I think he is the embodiment of an old F1 fan. I think some of the new F1 fans, or myself, where we don't mind sort of some of the artificial racing, we sort of enjoy looking at these regulations and the technology. But if you're a diehard sort of race driver where you like your GT3s, your rallies like you, Drew, I can see why you're getting bored of F1. And rightly so. If you don't want to watch it, don't. And if you don't want to take part in it, also don't. I just think it's a bit strange how he's been so vocal about it. And then when it's actually happened, it seems like it's been a very, very quick decline in his sort of enthusiasm for the sport itself.
If he's not in, was it top 3? Is that right? If he's not in the top 3 by mid-season, he can leave. That's a worrying clause. For any team, that's a worrying clause to have in a contract, in the driver contract.
I'm really surprised that they've put that in there for him, actually. Especially unless they thought that they would be in a lot better position than they are currently. And unless like Mercedes have actually caught them out and surprised everybody with what they've done. I'm really surprised that they allowed that clause to get in there. But apparently he's had it for a couple of years. It's just kept the flagpoles just kept changing. So like this year it's top 2, last year it was in the top 5 and like things like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a case of maybe he's been in a little bit of a talk with his team about that and thinking about his future and having that in front of him. Maybe he's wanted to change that slightly this year so that it gives him the option to leave.
So what if he does?
I don't think it will really change anything. I mean, F1 isn't big, like no driver's bigger than F1. So I think that if he wants to go, it's a good time for him to leave. I mean, he's defined the top of the sport, really. So once you've done that, where else is there to go, especially when there's new goals and challenges to chase in other series? There's not really a reason for him to stay in F1 anymore if that's what he chooses to do.
There's also the option of you can always come back to F1. Hamilton's got his LH44 in Dakar now. There's loads of stuff that they do, but you could come back.
Okay, so I get your point, and I do take your point in terms of no driver being bigger than Formula One, but we had this last year, I think it was, when Kalle Rovanperä left the WRC as champion. When a world champion leaves the sport, I don't feel it reflects very well on the sport. If you're a world champion and you're not coming back to defend it or to continue to push, what does that say about the sport? I'm just concerned that if it's maybe not even if Max leaves, it's more the manner in which he leaves, perhaps, that might actually damage Formula One's reputation, which Liberty Media are so desperate to maintain. I mean, has anybody seen the interview that Stefano Domenicali did with Autosport recently? About a day or 2 ago. You not seen it? It came up on a clip on TikTok, and the clip was basically him saying, "Overtaking's overtaking. I don't care. It's all the same." And that really, really angered me, because it's not. A true overtake and an assisted overtake are 2 totally different things. And if the top of the tree of the governing body has that attitude, what hope do we have?
Do you ever think of looking at it from the media's side, where if you've got a lot of the newer fans, maybe they've not been following it for a few years, they don't really understand it. It's exciting. I mean, that first race I loved. It's only looking back on it that I thought it was a bit artificial, like was discussed. but it is still exciting at the time. And that's probably what's going to get you the views. And that's what makes the money at the end of the day.
Yeah. And he's been chasing, I don't want to call it the young folk because that's unfair to the people watching. Yes, you have a contingent of people who watch it on the surface and think, yeah, this is great, lots of overtaking, lots of action. But just because somebody has come in, let's say through Drive to Survive or whatever, doesn't mean they don't know the sport. It doesn't mean they haven't listened to interviews, done their research, learned the sport. Just because they've come in through a TV show, I'm not going to say that every single one of them doesn't know what they're talking about, because that's simply just not true. And yeah, you'll have that certain amount of people that will just see it for its face value. But how much really does it take for somebody who's just come in to go, oh, well, actually, I enjoyed it, but all the drivers are saying it's fake?
I think there needs to be a really fine line struck between what's entertaining and what fans enjoy watching, and then what's actually safe and works for the sport. And I think at the moment we don't have that line drawn yet. And I think this is what we're struggling with at the moment in terms of these new regs is, yes, okay, it's been done, obviously, to increase the entertainment value of the sport, which is great from one aspect, but from another, from a safety and technical point of view, it doesn't work. And I think that there needs to be a bridge between the two so that it works for both parties, because you want the sport to be entertaining at the end of the day. That's the whole point of it. That's why people watch. But you also want it to be done in a safe way and done in a very technically sound way as well, which I don't think they've managed yet.
I like how you brought that up, because shall we discuss the Ollie Behrman in the room?
Yeah, let's. Because that's been the trigger. It's been the catalyst for the conversation.
Yes, I know that a lot of teams have already said that it's a potential issue that, suddenly them losing that sort of 50 kilometers an hour because of the battery deployment. They've been warning it for about a year now. And then obviously now it has happened. I don't actually know how they're going to fix that, because it's ingrained into the racing. That's how the teams have decided to lift and coast to get a faster overall lap. And it'd be really interesting to see what they do with the regulations to actually sort that out, because I don't see a clear explanation of actually dealing with it properly.
Well, there's a couple of things that's baked in, isn't there? Regs say that you should lose 50 kilojoules of power in steps down to the minimum. And obviously Merck and Red Bull, I kind of feel sorry for saying Red Bull, to be honest, but Merck and Red Bull have had this trick banned whereby they've sort of ignored the step down, carried on to the very last second, and then just dropped it on a qualifying lap. Doesn't work in the race, but for a qualifying lap, it's obviously gained them extra overspeed and lap time. But that's now since been banned. So they are trying different ways to change that. And they are talking about reducing the available power from the battery as well. So it's a tweak at this stage, but I think in future regs, they are looking at least at moving away from a 50-50 back to more towards the ICE engine, which I think is actually better, because do we really need a full hybrid 50-50 in Formula One when we've got Formula E? I don't think we do.
Yeah, I don't think we do. I watched both series. I watched both Formula One and Formula E, and they are very, very different in their fundamentals and how they go racing. And I think that if sustainability is an issue for Formula One, or if that's the issue they're trying to tackle, then there are numerous other ways that they can tackle that without having to make it look like they're doing something on track specifically to help with that. Yeah, I think when we have series like Formula E that are doing that, and obviously they've just got their, I can't remember the name of it. They got their B Corp certificate a couple of months ago. So they are now a B Corp rated sport, which is really interesting. So, and F1 is never ever going to reach those heights that, in terms of sustainability. So when you already have a racing series that's doing that, I don't feel like it's needed in F1.
Well, I think there's two different types of sustainability, though. So you've got the Formula E that's all power, no fuels, no combustion. And I think Drew was on about it on a conversation I had this week, where can you not make the actual fuel itself sustainable? Because I know that they do it for World Rally. I think F1, is it 100% sustainable now, I believe? There's other ways you can go down the fuel line. You don't have to make it electric. And looking at Formula E in particular, I hate the fact it's got them attack modes and the fan support can make the cars faster. You might as well just pick up an Xbox controller in that case. Nothing against it, but it's not actual motorsport in my eyes. Motorsport needs an engine. It needs suck, squeeze, bang, blow going on, basically. It's just strange how they're trying to make best of both worlds and sort of missing the mark on both, really, because there must have been a lot of planning and a lot of lobbying by like the car companies, by the manufacturers, the sponsors. There's been a lot going on to get to these rules. And I think now they've suddenly realized we need to change something, but there's a lot of powers behind it. And I don't understand why they've gone that way and if they'll backtrack to an acceptable level for the fans.
We've obviously got two sides of motoring. We've got the internal combustion, we've got the electric. In terms of electric, Formula E is doing very well. But in terms of internal combustion, there is an answer. The effect that it would have if it was rolled out would be massive. Far more probably than what electric's currently producing. I don't know. Do you know much about the sustainable fuel side of things? Either of you? No? So I was looking into it a couple of years ago and I did an article that's on the website about it. It's probably changed and been updated since then. But at that point, a German company, P1 Fuels, were developing fuel for the World Rally Championship. And they've been using sustainable fuel for years now. Maybe not completely exclusively, but for quite a long while. And P1 Fuels were at that point saying that their sustainable green fuels were 85% clean, 85% fossil free, with an aim to getting up to 95%. I'm not sure where that line is currently with the current Formula One fuels, but we have to think, well, okay, that's great for Formula One or World Rallying or wherever you happen to use it. But the great thing about motorsport is it all filters down. All that technology filters down. Like the paddle shift, for instance, in your ordinary road car, that's come from Formula One. So if you were to have that sustainable fuel filter down and the infrastructure be taken up to a level where we could all use it. This is the other thing. Sustainable fuels are literally drop in. So we have the infrastructure in all the petrol stations. It'll probably need changing to actually make the fuel, but that's not that difficult. And then we could turn up to our local petrol station and just fill us cars up. There's no mechanical change needed. So if you were to do that, think of how many cars there are on the road. Billions. And it would go all the way back to 70s, 60s, maybe even 50s cars. And you would turn all of those internal combustion engines 85% green overnight. Just think about that effect for the environment. So if your question around Formula One is sustainability, I think personally that will have a far greater effect than what electric's currently having in terms of its scale.
I completely agree with you. I think that is the way forwards. I think as well, the race calendar itself could potentially be adjusted slightly just to make it a little bit more sustainable for people getting around from A to B. But yeah, there's a lot of other things they can do to make the sport more sustainable. They don't need necessarily the battery side of things and the electrical side of things.
Well, we'll see what they do. I mean, it would be great to see a V8 on sustainable fuels, to be honest. But we will see, I suppose. Just to circle back a little bit, he might not, but if Max was to leave, what do we reckon that would do to the driver market?
I think that would be one of the funnest driver markets since, past 3 years. So who realistically would take the Red Bull seat? Because they're not really doing that great at the moment. You've got McLaren just about to sort of kick it up a gear again come Miami. I'm really looking forward to that. Ferrari's on the powertrain. Mercedes is doing Mercedes, dominating. Fantastic. I don't think it'd have that much of an effect, to be honest, because unless you're sort of maybe Carlos Sainz, perhaps, or maybe even Bottas, that'd be interesting. But I don't think Red Bull's a very attractive team at the moment, and I think the only person to benefit from Max leaving would be Isaac. He would then be the number one, and I dare say they'd probably pull the reserve driver in for a bit, or maybe one of the F2 drivers, because a lot of the other teams, it's new regulations. You need to sort of just get embedded with it. You don't want to suddenly jump ship, I don't think.
Piastri?
I think Piastri does need to leave McLaren at some point. I think it should be for Red Bull or potentially Ferrari, but maybe not as they are right now. But I would like to see him do well in another team. I think that after last year, after watching the season last year and watching what he is capable of and what we all now know he's capable of, he's definitely a world championship contender. And I think future winner as well, definitely. So whether he does that McLaren or somewhere else is up for debate, but I think he'll only do it somewhere else.
You don't think he's going to manage to get a title with McLaren?
Not this year, and maybe not next year if they don't sort the car out, but we'll see what these Miami updates bring.
What about inter-team politics at McLaren? Do you think as in potential first and second? Let's not forget his manager, Mark Webber, has even now a bee in his bonnet about first, second drivers. He's got Mark in his ear, constantly going, don't let them do that to you. Don't let them do that to you. Do you think that's going to have an effect?
Which I think it could do, but what team do you put Piastri in where he does then become the first driver?
I think if he moved to Red Bull, he would be first. I think because he's got more experience than Isaac has. He's further down the journey than he is. The only way he's getting into Ferrari is if one of them leave, and I don't honestly see Charles Leclerc leaving. I think he's been there that long now. I think he wants a title at Ferrari, at least one before he moves on, which kind of really only leaves Lewis. And I'm not sure how long Lewis wants to stick around either. I think he wants his 8th/9th. But as to how long he's prepared to stick around, especially with his personal life, he's happy now. Does he need to?
I don't think we'll see Lewis retire or have a sabbatical or whatever. I don't think yet. I think he's finally found himself after last season. I think he was really not having a good time last year. And to be honest, for a good few years now, but I think he's finally back, and he enjoys the car. You can tell when he's talking to media and things like that. You can tell he enjoys where the team's at. I do still think that Mercedes kind of crept up on everybody. I think that Ferrari did think they had a championship winning car and then got to testing and was like, oh, maybe not. Both drivers seem happy. We'll just have to see whether Ferrari can maintain the position that they're in currently over the course of this season. Because I think that I have seen some articles around Leclerc and his manager discussing that Ferrari have to give him a championship winning car this season, or he's out, basically. He's going to be having, what do they call them? Discovery chats or whatever it is with other teams. So that's, definitely interesting. I think Leclerc isn't as set on staying at Ferrari as he once was.
That's really interesting. So the option could be Leclerc's seat then, rather than Hamilton.
But then again, where would we put Leclerc? Because I cannot see him driving for any other team than Ferrari. It's just, I can't see him in another colour than red.
I don't know. I could see him in McLaren. If Piastri leaves to wherever, let's say Red Bull, that opens up a seat for Leclerc in McLaren. That's a potential possibility, especially if they close that gap and they bring themselves back up into that top 3 fight. I think that could be an attractive option for him, more so than when Carlos Sainz moved to Williams. I didn't think he would move to Williams. I thought that was a risk too far, much like Danny Rick when he moved to, was it Renault first? I kind of always knew that was going to be a mistake for him, because it's such a task to bring a team up from midfield up to the top two. I thought that was a huge risk for Danny Rick. Carlos has got a fight on his hands to try and get that Williams up the table. So for Piastri to do the same thing and move to a team that's maybe, dare I say, a midfield team, Red Bull now, I think if he's got an option to move somewhere else, he probably would.
I can see it happening. I can definitely see a Piastri Red Bull move in the future. Is whether that happens at the end of this season into next or in the future, but I can definitely see it. I don't think he would stay at McLaren long term the same way Lando would.
No, I think Lando's definitely a McLaren driver through and through. He's going to be there for a while, I think. How safe, and I know who I'm speaking to when I say this, but how safe do we think Mercedes drivers are?
Well, I'll start with by saying, no, I am pretty confident. We don't know like the details of the contract, but I'm pretty confident from what George is saying in the press that he's on a 1+1 deal. So I don't think he's moving anywhere anytime soon. I think if Kimi gets anywhere near this championship, which, I mean, he's already sort of winning it at the moment or leading it. So yeah. I think both of them just stay for next year. I don't think there's going to be a dramatic move. I think George has already got his contract. And then the only other question was Kimi, but Kimi's managed to pull off the impossible. Coming out of his rookie season to leading a championship is insane. But we are talking about Kimi Antonelli here, so maybe it's not as impossible for him as it would be for others. But yeah, I think George has been really unlucky in recent years, but actually since the beginning of his career, he's been quite an unlucky driver. And I think it's a shame that he's finally got into a championship winning car for Mercedes, and then they've built a rocket ship for Antonelli as well. So I think I don't think he expected that to happen, but I think both are safe.
I mean, we've only had a handful of races, not even a handful of races, so it's really early to be making judgments on their performance. Granted, Kimi's got back-to-back, and that is an amazing achievement in your first proper season. I do think, I say this because I don't really like the way that George is putting himself out of late, last 2-3 years, but I do still think it's a bit unfair that the media has been probably picking him out of the two as being the one to go. I do think that's a little unfair. He is still kind of the leader of Mercedes. I just get that feels like he's just not getting the full support he probably should, but who knows? Maybe that's different behind the scenes. I think he deserves his shot. He just needs to stop whining about it as much, to be fair.
Do you think he whines a lot, or do you think it's just broadcasts a lot? Because if you're in a car and they're going past you and they annoy you, you're going to tell them to do certain stuff and play the blame game like Verstappen did of, he rolled a little bit forward on the start line. I think George is just getting a bad rap at the moment. And I think that's compounded by the fact that you've got your Verstappen fans that hate Hamilton, you've got Hamilton fans that hate Verstappen. There's this new bloke that we can all hate together.
Yeah, it is a side of F1 I don't particularly enjoy, to be fair. I'm a fan of the sport, and if somebody's doing well, they're doing well. I don't really care what team they are at. I have my favourite, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to, put anybody else down. So I'm not in that camp. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I mean, as an editor myself, you can only edit what you've got. And he is saying the things he says in the way that he says it sometimes, and sometimes it just does come off a little whiny compared to.
Yeah, I think it definitely is. It definitely is the way he says it, because everyone does it.
Yeah.
Like Max does it, Lando's done it, Hamilton's done it in the past. Like every driver has had something to say about somebody that they've raced against, or about the way that the sport's conducted. They all do it. I think with George specifically, it's the way that he says things that gets people's backs up. It's the language he uses is really inflammatory, and he doesn't have the same stick that Verstappen does, in the way that Verstappen can say whatever he likes. People are going to clap sometimes. But George doesn't have that. And I don't think he's realised that yet. So he's out here doing the same thing Verstappen is, and just saying what the first thing that comes to his mind. And people are going, wait a minute, we can't really have that from you, or we don't accept that from you.
To be fair, if I was George, I'd just shut up, get on with it, and prove it out on track. It's like,
absolutely, because
you can't beat Max. You can't beat Max at his own game with that, and you're never going to do that. If it was me, I'd just go, right, I'm just going to have you on the next straight, and I'm going to win this championship, and then you can all shut up. Because I think that's the best way. There's no talking. You can't talk his way out of it.
You're missing a part of the F1 though. It's similar to football, unfortunately, where it is a bit political. So if someone's going to roll over with a sort of damaged knee in football, they'll get a penalty, and that gives you an advantage. Same sense as if you are a bit of a tattletale on the radio, you can benefit from that, unfortunately. That's just another part that we don't often see. And I really wish at some point they would open up the communications fully so the fans can select a driver and know every single thing of when they're saying it, because there's a massive delay on when they're broadcast. And I feel that would be really interesting. Obviously, it'd be difficult to implement because you've probably got all the other teams listening into what strategy and modes and all this sort of stuff. But I think for the fans, that would be a really interesting point to add. And it might also broaden the horizons to not everyone's whinging. They're just driving around at 300 miles an hour. And it's a little bit stressful sometimes.
That's a fair point, that. It is stressful. I'm not on board with full-time radios, though.
Really?
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. And it's the same in WRC, which I'm really glad has changed, actually. So there's a section, like when they come out of the stage on WRC, where we used to be able to hear them talk. And it was just nothing ever good came from that. And it's the same with Formula One. The whole point of a team radio isn't to entertain the fans. It's to communicate between you and your engineer. And there has to be some secrecy there. Otherwise, how are you going to get one up on your competitors? So I don't see 100% access to absolutely everything being that great. From a fan point of view, all right, yeah, maybe, but no, it just doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah, I agree with you, Drew. I think how would you even monitor that? How would they even edit that? It's just a lot of information going on at once. But no, I think they pull out the right things. I do think that when we're watching the race, the only things the fans need to know are pulled out at the right times. So I think that they do a really good job of that, and I don't see the need to know it all, really.
Yeah. But you had a point about that earlier, didn't you, Zach, about the coverage?
A lot of the team radios, I think, are a couple of laps behind, obviously because they've got to process it, edit it, get the subtitles up. But as for the way that it's portrayed at the moment, so the actual sort of team radio is fantastic. But I think what the fans need more of, just to have a bit of a segue, is the actual graphics. I know that you're not a huge fan of them, Drew, but I think in these regulations, you have to see what the battery's doing. Because at the moment, you're seeing cars and suddenly they're losing seconds, suddenly they're gaining them. You need more of, like, back in the days when you had like the actual full one with the KERS system and everything, and that little ERS battery. I think you need more of that to actually understand what's going on in the races, which is why I feel with the actual team radios, it needs to be a little bit faster and to make the fans understand what's going on a bit more. Because most of what this season will be, I believe, like come Miami, it's going to be a behind-the-scenes development war.
I'm on board with the graphics. We definitely need to see because it's 50-50 split. We need to see how much power they've got on the electrical side as much as anything else. But it's also the director side of things. We're missing key points of the action where we should be seeing it. And instead, we're just watching the leader go around. Where what we should be seeing is the battle for 5th or 6th further down. That's a little bit more interesting. That's what needs to improve. And they were so good at that as well at one point. So to have lost that seems a bit of a shame. So yeah, that could
they were only good at that though when Verstappen was winning, because Verstappen was in first, 30 seconds ahead. So unless you're going to show a bloke on his own on the track, you have to then go for the midfield. Whereas now, they just seem to be filming Ferrari going tit for tat, and Antonelli or Russell are just storming ahead again. But, I mean, I don't think I've seen a Cadillac drive round a corner, apart from, once? The Alpines, I very rarely see. Aston Martins, obviously, you see when the blue flags come out, all the reds. But it just seems a bit sporadic at the moment, really.
I do like the fact that the field's closer. So that is a big thumbs up for the new regs. But yeah, they definitely need to move away a little bit from the top three battle, because there are some great moments further down the field that we're not seeing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we've covered off a few of the points that's troubling F1 at the moment, but with the forced spring break that we're currently in, do you think that they can fix these issues in 5 weeks? Is that enough time?
No, I don't think so. I think if you look at the calendar, right, from Miami onwards, Miami's a sprint, and then you've got another sprint in Canada, and then you've got Monaco, where you don't really want to test anything at Monaco because it's Monaco. So the next time that they can test anything is going to be Barcelona, which is now round 7. It was supposed to be round 9, but it's like just before the summer break. So they're going to let the drivers race as they are for another 2 months before actually being able to implement anything. Whether they have that sat somewhere ready to go is another thing altogether. But before they're able to actually implement anything properly and give them enough running time with the cars, it's going to be sort of just before another really extreme break. So I don't really see them fixing anything properly this side of the summer break.
Interesting. When does the ADHU come into play?
So that was supposed to be in Miami, and it was whether they were going to let that. I think they're still in talks actually of whether that's going to go forwards or not, because it was always supposed to be the fourth and the 6th race of the season, where they were going to make the checks and see who was within 2%. I think it's 2 to 4% of the fastest PU. So I think it was supposed to be one of the cancelled races, and they pushed it to Miami, or it was supposed to be Miami, and they're in discussions of whether that's actually going to go ahead because of the cancelled races. But it should be coming into effect very shortly, regardless, really. It'll be in the next 2 races that they have a look at that.
There's certainly some teams that desperately need it. I have heard, might be a rumour, I have heard that that Aston Martin may have got around their vibration issues. Fingers crossed. I've also heard that it was kind of forced by Adrian Newey. He kind of forced Honda to change their design so that he could have a sleeker body, which, if that is the case, isn't a great look for possibly the world's greatest designer. But I mean, if they can get around that and they can get back on form, I'd like to see that. I really would. I think Fernando needs it. I mean, what other reason has he got to stick around? I want to see him race again, because in that period, was it 2 or 3 years ago, where they were doing really, really well for the first half of the season before McLaren then overtook them? It was so exciting to see them back up and running. And for as much as we can have a go at Lance Stroll, I want to see Aston do well. It is still technically a British brand, but I want to see them do well, and I want to see them improve. So if they can get around this vibration issue and improve things, then all the better. Do you think they're anywhere near improving that?
Well, I think for this year, they're probably going to sort some of the vibration issues out. But one of the main issues is when it's vibrating, it's also damaging the battery, and then the engine's down on power, therefore they can't use the battery, and it's just a huge cycle. And I was actually looking, they're obviously doing worse than Cadillac, which is a bit of a shock to, I think, everyone originally. You got Newey designing a car, it should be amazing. It's underpowered and it's overweight. And I was looking at the stats, it's actually worse than the McLaren between 2015 and 2017, which I think is insane, because that car was a bicycle with an engine. It was shocking. That made me stop watching McLaren for a few years, and that is my team.
It'd be nice to see them race again. And like, for a good few seasons now, I've sort of played the game of where's Lance Stroll when we're watching a race, and he's always sort of within the top 10 or near it. So I don't think he's, as bad of a racer as people make him out to be. I think he just needs a good car and needs a good team around him. And I think that Aston Martin does have that. It'd be nice to see it work.
I think we've touched on that before, haven't we? About the Lance Stroll thing. So obviously he does get a lot of hate. I mean, looking at the papers with him in his other little adventures, should we say, he was getting loads of penalties. Everyone's saying he's rubbish. But if you look at the qualifying pace, generally speaking, And obviously we won't include this year because the car's rubbish. But he's about, 2/10, half a second out from the top guy? Because probably with his dad's money, he's stayed in the sport. He's always been the one that everyone hates because he's not as good as everyone else. Like everyone else, that usually, if you're not as a good driver, you get fired. That's just the nature of the beast. It's business. But because he's been in it so long, he's always looked at the scapegoat of your rubbish and your daddy's money. Nando Norris is a paid driver as well, but no one seems to hate him for it.
What if it's the other way around now? What if it's his dad wanting him to do it because his dad wants him to be a champion more than he does? Because I've got a question in my head about Lance Stroll's desire to be a Formula One driver. You see him when he's, in the press pit or in the press conferences, and he just doesn't seem present like the other drivers are. He's there. It feels like he's there because he has to be. Could that be it? Because he's tried GT now. Maybe he wants to move. Maybe he's seen Max and gone, oh, that's a good idea. Could it just be his lack of desire? Because his dad wants him to be a world champion.
I mean, his dad bought the F2 team and then used F1 parts, and that's part of the reason that Stroll unfortunately won his F2 championship. Or F3, I think it was, wasn't it? He skipped F2 entirely.
F3.
Yeah.
I think it was F3.
But maybe his dad's also thinking, I've put so much money in, I need to get something out. And Stroll's now not interested. I think you are right in when you said that.
Well, only they will know, I guess. I don't think we'll ever get an answer to that. Obviously, they're not the only overweight team. There's a few in there. And again, I'm disappointed in having to bring it up. It feels mean because I really like James Vowles. And I really like Williams. But again, they spent all this time, all this money, sacrificing previous seasons, all in the name of 2026. And they're nowhere. What do we reckon about the state of Williams at the moment then?
Yeah, I'm just as disappointed as you, to be honest. Like you say, they've spent years saying 2026 is going to be our season, and they've come to 2026. They didn't even get to testing on time. They're overweight. They can't seem to understand what's going on with it. And apparently the car's three-wheeling as well. So yeah, it's not looking good, is it, for Williams at the moment?
It's really not. And again, it sort of cycles back to what I was saying about trying to get a midfield team up into the upper echelons of the sport. It's a task in itself, even for a driver as talented as Carlos Sainz. I want them to do well. I just don't think they've got the resources, which is a silly thing to say, but I don't think they've got the necessary resources to get them to that point. How they fix that, I don't know. Something different needs to change because they've still got the same problem. They're still running without a full two-car team. They're still overweight. They should have brought not necessarily a rocket ship to the start of 26, but certainly a top midfield contender, and they've failed to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what the answer is to how they fix it or where they begin with that. I think there's a lot of work for them to be doing.
So let's go back to the top of the field then. Do you reckon Ferrari can bridge that gap to Mercedes? Obviously, off the line for the first half a lap, they're great. They're on the point. They're on the ball, and they are mixing it with the Mercs.
That depends if Mercedes are in front or not. So I think they have actually made a really good car, obviously. I mean, the results speak for themselves, but it can be quite weak when it's not in the clean air. And I reckon that's something that Ferrari could exploit. I reckon as long as they can pitch Mercedes at that first corner, they've got it.
I do agree with what you're saying, Zach. Absolutely. I think that either come Miami, we'll either see a very level playing field in terms of the top three, like Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, or we'll see the exact same things that we've been seeing for the first three races. And it's impossible to tell because we've got so many updates coming and so many things going on with each team that until we sit down and actually watch that first sprint race, or even maybe even just the race itself, we're not going to know what that looks like.
To be honest, guys, I actually think Ferrari are closer than we've seen, because in at least it might even be all 3 races of the season so far. We have seen a great initial get off the line by Ferrari, a very early battle between Ferrari and Mercedes. Then Mercedes go off into the distance because Ferrari, both Leclerc and Hamilton, are too busy fighting with each other. Yeah, great. It looks great. You're all having fun. Well done, guys. You're in second and third. Work as a team, get down the bloody track and go for them.
This has been my point. This has been my point all season. This is exactly what I've been shouting about all over the place, is that they're so busy, like, as you say, fighting each other for P3, that they're not focusing as a team to get them past P3 and into the sort of the top 1-2 scenario. And I think it's something that they do very specifically that I've seen no other team do it, where they're just fighting each other for positions this early on in the season. I think they just need to work together and try and push themselves into a position where they could be 1-2 every weekend or every race weekend.
Yeah. Whoever comes out ahead needs to then act as a tow for the car behind. A bit like, who's his teammate now? A bit like Carlos Sainz did with Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. He backed him up so that they could basically go together and travel down that road and maintain road position. They need to start working as a team instead of fighting. And I think they both really want to see themselves as the number one driver. But that's not important right now. You need to work as a team and as a whole engine, work your way down, because they're losing so much time on track fighting. It's inevitable where they're going to finish. And I'm really surprised that a multiple champion hasn't figured that out yet.
I think he's figured it out. I just don't know whether the team are allowing him to have that say. I think there's a lot of things that Lewis might think, or like there are a lot of positions he stands on, but whether that's executed by the team is another thing altogether.
Charles as well, because obviously he's the guy in the other car coming past. But I'd love to see them start working as a team and taking it to the max. What do you think overall we've learnt from the first few races of the season?
There's a lot of work to be done with these new regulations. And I think that that's the biggest takeaway for everybody in the first 3 races of the season, as it would be with any regulation change that we've seen over the course of, sports history. There's always work to be done when they first are released and tested on track. But I think this time specifically, because of the safety aspects of it and what we've seen in Japan and things like that, there's an awful lot of work that needs to be done quite quickly there.
It's a surprise that it's actually taken an accident to trigger that. So I'm hoping that gets rectified soon. Do we think it's the spring break is going to be a big reset for the season then? Or do we think it's not going to make a great deal of difference?
I know that I'm looking forward to Miami, and it is literally going to be just like a new 2026 season, I think. I feel like I've had like the demo disc. I've seen that. I kind of know a little bit more about the rules, how it works. And this one, you've got more upgrades. You've got the drivers that, generally speaking, know a little bit more about how to actually use their batteries. So you're not getting that initial tit for tat artificial racing, maybe. And I think it's going to be a big positive compared to what we've seen. I think it should go really well. And now McLaren's in the mix as well. All we need now is Aston Martin to actually finish the race, and we can have all 12 teams fighting.
What about yourself, Laura?
I don't think it'll change that much, to be honest. But I mean, maybe I'm slightly biased as a Mercedes fan, but I just think that we've had this a lot this season of, we'll bring in these updates and they're going to do this, and they haven't. And so I think that until I see it and until I see an actual change on track, I'm not inclined to believe any of it. Just yet.
The break will have more of an effect for those lower teams than it will the top ones. I think that 5 weeks where they've got no races to attend, no press really to speak of to do, they can really double down on sorting out any fundamental issues that they've got. So I think the difference will be subtle, and I think it will be further down the field. At least for the summer breaks. Spring break, should I say. The summer break is a different kettle of fish altogether. It's a much, much further away, so we'll see what happens with that. Right, okay, let's leave it there. Thank you very much for your time, guys. Nice to see you all again, and we'll see you on the next one.